Video games, alongside other forms of entertainment, are currently walking into what I can only call dark waters with how things are going currently. I've spoken on things like RAM before. I even told my viewers if they want to buy their upgrades for their PCs or anything else, the sooner they do it, the better. Because the prices are starting to enter biblically bad territory very quickly. For example, imagine a world where your favorite AAA game studios are now being forced to cut features planned in their future games, or delay their releases, or even cancel projects entirely. Not because of a lack of creativity or skill, but because of a single reason that is more important than many know. It isn't a conspiracy theory either, by the way, it's the harsh reality of RAM's insidious price gouging, systematically strangling the very innovation we crave from our entertainment today. And also, if I sound weird, it's because I have the flu, but I still want to make content for you guys, so I apologize if I sound weird in this video, but it is what it is. So let's talk about how the predatory memory pricings that are currently exploding is directly dictating the future of gaming. And it's far more impactful than you think. Seriously, it's kind of wild actually. In case you don't know, RAM is the very lifeblood of everything you do when it comes to electronics. Your computers have them, your consoles, even your phones. The problem is that with the rise of AI usage, both in terms of industry changes as well as stuff like people making endless AI photos on X, for example, this is all having a genuine effect on the future of the content that we all consume. As the BBC reported here, everything you use is going up in price pretty much these days. Phones, games, computers, really you name it, it's going up. RAM actually used to be one of the cheapest components when it came to the whole system, but then in October 2025 alone, the price of RAM has since doubled in price and then some already. Like I said, AI data centers are mostly to blame, as every big company is now attempting to build up their infrastructure involving AI around the same time. It's not only getting more expensive, but it's also leaving the everyday consumer out in the cold actually as well. The BBC then spoke to Steve Mason, the general manager of CyberPower PC. As Steve said here, the costs have gone up by around 500% in a short period of time. Steve also says there will come a point where the manufacturers will have to make decisions about pricing, as to will the consumers. None of this is where we want the tech industry to go, I know that, but it's happening also faster than I really thought too. I did a video on RAM a few days ago already, thinking surely it was gonna be enough for now until something inevitably happened in the future. But even I was surprised to see how fast things are already moving. I thought maybe it would be a gradual increase in price and demand, but this is getting insane, guys. The problem is that this affects game development too, and it could also lead to all sorts of micro issues during development as well. As Steam Deck HQ reported here, by January 5th, 2026, which is when this video goes live by the way, the price of devices like the ROG Ally will be skyrocketing in price too. As Asus's own newsletter confirmed here, as you can see, the price increase is now in full effect, and everything they sell will now become far more expensive than they were just a few months ago. The Ally is allegedly going to now retail somewhere near $1,500 American starting January 5th, making the handheld now basically twice the price and then some of, say, a PS5 or an Xbox. It's not like this came out of nowhere though. As seen here back in May 2025, the Xbox consoles also increased in price by $100 already. Sony's PS5 has already gotten more expensive in Europe, New Zealand, and more as well. But these price increases were before the price of RAM went somewhere in the 500% increase range like it has now, meaning that the Xbox and PlayStation 5 are likely going to be even more expensive going forward too, 6 whole years after release, which is not what you want to see happen. I just can't believe that the Ally will be somewhere near $1,500. Like, that's just insane. The entire point of handheld gaming, at least in theory, is that it's usually more affordable than buying a console or PC, but that's just no longer the case. Now you will pay through the nose for everything, and again, this is only the beginning of 2026. These prices will likely increase even further now too. As Tech4Gamers reported here, Nvidia's flagship product, the RTX 5090, meant for PC gaming obviously, has already exploded in price to ungodly levels. To make you understand how brutal of an increase this really is, the 5090 used to cost roughly $2,000 American in 2025. Now it's going to retail somewhere near $5,000 in 2026. I don't need to tell you how expensive that is, obviously. As Tech4Gamers reported here, Nvidia and AMD will also be raising their prices of their flagship GPUs, which are integral to powering PCs. For example, obviously, if you want to play high-end video games as well, but this price hike is not stopping as it says there. Nvidia will continue to raise their prices in February 2026 as well, so I guess place your bets. How much will the 5090 cost then? 6, maybe 7,000 USD? That's over 300% and then some in terms of increasing the price from 2025. Absurd, I know. Generally speaking, based on what I could find, it's going to make everything more expensive, but the key here is that it will also cause delays to new products because there just isn't enough memory to go around. There's been plenty of reports that the PlayStation 6 and so on could be delayed due to this, and I'm in agreement that this will be the case. Because if Sony wants to start a new console generation by 2027, which is standard for them to update the PlayStation hardware every 7 years, it would make sense and track, but let's be real guys. How will Sony's next generation even get a footholding if the price of the PlayStation 6 is, I don't know, 1,000 or 1,200 USD at launch? Most people will just stick to what they already have, and I really don't blame them. The price of these electronics are getting out of whack, and realistically, a potential PS6 generation will fail not because people don't want it, but simply because how can they even afford it? It would come down to either rent or the PS6. For most people, it's just not realistic. I guess on the positive side, if you can even call it that, companies that are in the business of RAM and making memory chips will see their businesses apparently grow by almost $400 billion before long, which is insane. As NoobFeed said here, RAM prices have already increased by 500%, which is why, in my opinion, if you need to upgrade anything, it's better to do it sooner rather than later, or just wait a few years. Since the last time I spoke about this, RAM was like 300% more expensive. Now it's 500%. God knows where it's going to end up in the future at this rate. But like I said earlier too, this is going to have tangible effects on game development as well, because if consumers out there can't upgrade their PCs or the consoles can't operate at this new peak that AAA games usually want to chase these days, it's going to lead to an insane amount of optimization. As Tweaktown reported here using Larian Studios, that's the makers of Baldur's Gate 3 and Divinity, as the subject, this insane price gouging of RAM is 100% going to affect the development of video games in the future too. The general idea is that due to the explosive price of RAM, not only will players be less likely to be able to upgrade to the latest specs, but so too will game developers as well. It will lead to future games actually being made for limited RAM and VRAM specs, because if you optimize your game too much and make it so that only the most powerful PCs can play your game, in today's climate, you're going to be leaving millions of potential players behind in the dust by doing that now. Obviously, the usual idea is you make a bare minimum standard for how your game can run. It's easier on consoles because they're all the same, obviously, but when it comes to PC, everyone has different specs. In case you remember, Borderlands 4, for example, ran like absolute garbage for many because Gearbox skewed their latest release to only run well if you had a powerful PC gaming rig, which obviously left many players unable to play the game pretty much. This means that Borderlands 4 in the future can't be enjoyed as much, especially with the price increases, because nobody can afford the specs needed to even play the game in the first place now. What this will do for, say, Divinity when it comes to Larian, it means they might need to scale back their ideas and designs, because realistically, if certain features will need too much power, it might make the game unplayable for most, and it's not their fault either. The CEO of Larian recently spoke to TheGamer.com, which the CEO was then asked how the insane prices of RAM and how AI affects things could lead to entire gaming concepts being axed because it can't realistically be implemented into games due to these prices, as a CEO said here. It's like literally we've never had it like this. It kind of ruins all of your projections that you had about it because normally you know the curves and you can protect the hardware. It's going to be an interesting one. It means that most likely we already need to do a lot of optimization work in early access that we didn't necessarily want to do at that point in time. So it's challenging, but it's video games. But this is the problem, right? If not even the most talented game studios can gain access to the technology they need in order to make their games what they want, what does that mean for us, the players, then? It means that games might regress or stagnate, actually. In terms of graphical fidelity, you're really pushing the framework of what they can reasonably achieve because the price of everything is way too high to achieve it now. It might also mean that Divinity could likely not be as big of a jump from Baldur's Gate 3 as Larry would have hoped for originally, because not only can the consumers not really get their hands on the power needed to play these games, but these developers have their workstations, obviously. They need RAM too to make games in the first place. They have to have access to the very same things that are skyrocketing in price in order to make the games that you love and want to play in the future too. Maybe for the people watching this that don't care about the graphical fidelity of their games or feel the need to play things at 4K with all the bells and whistles, it might not matter as much to you. But the reality is that the players who do seek the most graphically impressive games are kind of the lifeblood of who these companies cater to because they are their customers. It would in theory lead to stagnation, not only in terms of graphics or anything else, but in terms of what these developers could create too. It means the sequel to a game that you're looking forward to might not be as far as a leap as you'd like it to be because of market prices and then some. The crazier part is that this stagnation in prices are not necessarily going away anytime anytime soon, depending on who you ask, obviously. These problems with RAM and so on might not normalize and return to affordable pricings until at least 2027 at the earliest. This means that a vast majority of games being made are going to have to scale back their ambitions because they can't reasonably meet them these days, meaning that game worlds could be smaller, graphical leaps less likely to happen, and true innovation being stifled because of these AI data centers eating up all the resources that everyone relies on. Unreal Engine 5, which is the most widely used engine in modern gaming right now, requires loads of RAM for developers to work with in order to make new gaming experiences too. Factoring in stuff like asset streaming, QA rigs, and more, it means that the future of video games might not be as next gen as you like it to hope to be anyways. But this also means that things like handheld gaming, because remember the Switch 2 exists and they need RAM as well, this could stifle a lot of innovation and projections too. It likely means that many games that do get made in the next few years will likely have to be scaled back so they can run on older hardware so these studios and publishers don't go out of business selling their games. However, there is a silver lining to all of this which technically will work in the favor of anybody watching this video. That being, of course, optimization, because so many games for years now have launched unoptimized, and that's, well, putting it lightly. I mentioned Borderlands 4 before, but even Hogwarts Legacy was another game that ate up a bunch of memory as well when that game launched too. As seen here from 2023, Hogwarts Legacy had notorious memory leaking issues, which meant that the game would use the memory of, say, your RAM on PC for stuff like character models or effects in the game, but the game would not free up this space once it was done using those models or textures, for example, either. So it would basically expand your use of memory and cause everything to basically implode upon itself, making the game unplayable for many. This would lead to FPS drops and more, but like I said, there is a silver lining here now. It means that because the adoption and increase in RAM won't be instant like it used to be because everything is so freaking expensive now, it will force developers to get crafty and actually have to optimize their games for lower spec hardware, meaning that in theory, games would be forced to release better optimized in the future due to all of this nonsense that's going on currently. Before, if a game wasn't well optimized, developers could brute force performance by speccing their games to higher rigs, but again, that's not realistic anymore. So in theory, while yes, everything will get more expensive, it also means that everything will have to be way better optimized too, just by principle alone. Meaning, while sure we have a RAM shortage and it means games and more won't be skewed to higher end rigs like they usually do, it also means that games that actually run well at release could become more commonplace instead. It's not like we don't know what a well optimized game looks like these days. After all, for as many times as you probably heard that Unreal Engine 5 is a nightmare to make games on, since so many games that are made on that engine tend to not work very well, we have games like Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which was also on Unreal Engine 5. You also have Arc Raiders. Arc Raiders was also on Unreal Engine 5, but the hope, at least in my opinion, is that the lack of get out of jail free cards for developers means that they'll have to actually start making their games better optimized in the future, meaning, well, sure, we won't have graphical leaps like we usually do. We'll instead have better performing games out of the gate, and that's still a win in my opinion. For example, look at Battlefield 6. Compared to previous Battlefield games when they released, Battlefield 6 runs beautifully from release even till now. The game somehow doesn't run like molasses, but that's because the game was optimized for what players are using right now. We don't need games, in my opinion, that are so technologically impressive that we can see every freckle on someone's face. What we need instead is games that run well and don't crash the entire system every time you try to play it. Even games like Baldur's Gate 3, despite its complexities, runs very well on many different PC gaming rigs and on consoles too, except Series S, of course. Even games like Stellar Blade, that also runs very well on the majority of PC rigs as well too. This could mean that this optimization meta will become the new normal, which I can only hope for. Because nothing sucks more than buying a game and it runs awful at release. Like, we've all been there, I'm sure. But the thing is that optimization, largely speaking, is usually not seen as a core pillar of the gameplay design these days. Instead, optimization usually comes well after release. But again, this is because any mistakes can be masked by that raw power to make up for it. But now that nobody can reasonably afford that power, you kind of need to meet people where they're at now. It will, in theory, reassess the entire way that game studios create games going forward. And honestly, as someone who primarily plays on PS5, I don't really see a reason to upgrade anytime soon anyways myself. There's still plenty of power that hasn't been unlocked out of that console yet, and I don't think I care anymore about playing a game just because it looks more realistic these days. I just want good games that run well, and personally, until these RAM prices start to fix themselves, this will become the new normal before long. Because if the prices of memory are raising 500% in a matter of months, nobody can afford to keep up to date with the most powerful rigs unless you're like a millionaire or something. Maybe it will lead to more games games being made that don't have super realistic graphics and all that, and honestly, I'm fine with this. Some of my favorite games could run on a potato anyways. Raw power was never the point for me anyways. Sure, the RAM prices thing is going to ruin a lot in terms of forward momentum. People will not be buying the latest technology and then some, but maybe this is what needs to happen to get games back on track if you ask me. It could lead to future games not running like garbage like Monster Hunter Wilds did on PC, or Borderlands 4 for literally anybody regardless of the platform they played that game on too. The absolute state of the industry has been on fire for a long time, but hopefully this leads to at least some positive change in the future. And the ultimate truth here is that with the lack of memory on offer for both the game development studios and the players too, this means that the kind of games that can be made will change as well. Games could get smaller, more focused, and also run better. And I'm sure that'll anger some players because they want the latest and best in graphical improvements, and the bigger the world, the better. But the reality is, if things continue the way that they're going, times will have to change no matter what they do. Either way, it's an interesting dilemma that is plaguing the entire tech industry, but hopefully this video helped you understand how it doesn't end there. But the writing has been on the wall for a long time now, because if you actually go look at what is required of these AI data centers these days, the reality is actually insane. As seen here from CNBC back in February 2025, NVIDIA's CEO even admitted that AI has to now operate at a level that is equal to 100 times what it's currently running at to meet the demand of the companies that are currently looking to use it. This has led to a 78% increase in sales for NVIDIA almost a year ago now. These days, it's way higher than that too. The actual situation is pretty bleak though, because Microsoft you would probably consider to be one of the biggest companies in general. Yet as Tom's Hardware reported back in November 2025 with an interview with the CEO of Microsoft as seen here, Satya Nadella admitted that despite the size of Microsoft, they simply do not have enough electricity available to them to power all the GPUs in their inventory to power their AI needs currently. Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, said this during the interview. I think the cycles of demand and supply in this particular case you can't really predict. The point is, what's the secular trend? The secular trend is what Sam, OpenAI CEO, said, which is at the end of the day, because quite frankly, the biggest issue we are now having is not a compute glut, but its power. It's sort of the ability to get the builds done fast enough close to power. So if you can't do that, you may actually have a bunch of chips sitting in inventory that I can't plug in. In fact, that is my problem today. It's not a supply issue of chips, it's actually the fact that I don't have warm shells to plug into. By the way, when Nadella uses the term shell, he means actual data centers, which are usually remote, empty buildings that have access to electricity and water to power the said AI computing systems. But you then have to wonder if the absolute state of current corporate greed is far outweighing where these companies can reasonably reach these days. If Microsoft can't find enough power on planet Earth as we speak right now to power their operations, what does this mean for places like Nvidia? Or Tesla, Meta? And again, this ties into video games too, because publishers are on track to replace things like quality assurance and even localization of their games via AI, which means they too need these same kind of data centers to run for them as well. It's like we're going to get to the point where companies are going to be building shell cities pretty much in like remote areas of the world just to power their ambitions at this point. But the ramifications of AI will have a real world effect on, say, the wildlife and the well-being of the environment around it too. Which then makes you wonder if the hunger of chasing this AI future will not be worth the cost in the long run. This is why everything will get more expensive, why Nvidia and more will just continue to make more and more billions every single year as well. Because everyone, no matter what, is going all in on AI. Whether you like that or not, it's just the reality at this point. One of the ways these mega companies are working to fix these problems is to invest in small modular nuclear reactors to scale their power sources, as the interview states there. And as Tom's Hardware says further, the race for AI supremacy has already skyrocketed the average bills for American taxpayers. And it's all just a race pretty much to compete with places like China for supremacy over who can control AI the best in the future. But you then have to wonder if this is really worth the risk, because the universe runs on a very simple concept: give and take. Something must be taken from somewhere to be given elsewhere. And if this AI push is going to lead to higher bills for average people, a stifling in innovation and scope, as well as true graphical pushes in games, I then have to ask, is this really worth the risk and the sacrifice, but what will this also mean for the future? and that actual game development is going to force itself to change whether they want it to or not. And I personally think that's going to be very interesting to say the least. But that's what I got today. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe. See you next time. And if you haven't noticed this entire video, I have a cold and my voice hurts. So this was hard to record. But anyways, have a great day, guys.